Hello there, it's Andy Lockwood, Lockwood College Prep, and we're doing a special snowbound edition of College Planning Secrets. One of the names for the college planning stuff that we talk about a couple times a month. The backstory is originally I was scheduled to speak out in the Smithtown Public Library. Tonight we had about 70 people registered, and the library was open today, but we made a mutual decision to not do the workshop and reschedule at a date to be determined later. But instead, since I had the night off, I figured I would invite anyone and everyone who is interested in trying to figure out how to pay wholesale for college, meaning what they can do to cut the crazy cost of college, to help their kids choose colleges if they don't know where to start, how to multiply your chances of getting into a top college, especially if you think about it, when your kid has really the same grades and the same SAT or ACT scores as maybe 5,000 people. How do you distinguish yourself on paper? So that's what this presentation is going to be all about. I don't know how long it's going to go. I'm guessing we're going to do maybe 30 minutes or so. I have a list of questions, stuff that I had advertised before and gotten people to sign up in Smithtown before we open this up to everyone on the interwebs. So I'll just read through the topics pretty quickly, then I'll start breaking them down and covering them. I'll stop periodically for your questions. If you have any questions about financial aid scholarships, getting into college, choosing a major, choosing a list of colleges, anything that has to do with the whole process, this is a great opportunity at no charge to be able to throw them at me. Oh, and I'm going to be giving away my book. So I wrote a book called How to Pay. Well, I wrote 3 books, but I wrote this. This one is my financial aid book, How to Pay Wholesale for College. That's the old version, about 3 years old. So I took it upon myself to update it this year. I just finished it off a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to be giving it away. I mean, you can buy it if you want. It makes a great holiday gift. But I'm going to give you a link to download it for free in a few minutes after I take a break here from some of the topics and the questions. So let me see who is with us so far. I want to make sure that the broadcast is audible, not necessarily intelligent, but I want to make sure that you can hear us okay. So I see we've got a few people coming on now. Just say hi in the comment section. Let me know you can hear me, just so I'm not shouting at no one. But I see we have about 9 people so far. So, good. Okay. Here we go here. All right, looks like you guys can hear me, which is great. But this is the place in the comment section, that's the place to ask me your questions. So, all right, topic number 1, the 529 college savings account and why they're not all they were supposed to be, cracked up to be, and what to do about it if you have one. Topic 2, the truth about what it takes to get into a top college. Hint, it's not politically correct, and it's based on way more, that's several A's, than grades and scores. How to negotiate a better deal with the college even if you can't get your hands on any compromising photos of the dean or wiretap audio or you name it. The screwball reason an expensive private college can actually cost less than an El Cheapo State University. If there's any doubt about, any question about who wrote these, let me put those doubts to rest. I wrote these all. Next topic, the biggest mistake families can make in college admissions and financial aid and how to avoid it. That's actually kind of challenging for me to narrow that down to one, but I will do that. Next topic, your guidance counselor says that can flat out sabotage your chances of admission to your dream school. That'll be a little controversial, I think, especially if there's any guidance counselors watching. And 4.5 loopholes, any one of which could triple your eligibility for financial aid. And finally, special advice or strategies for business owners. So that's what's on tap. Hello to Dan. I see you have a question. So yeah, anyone who has questions like Dan, pop them right here in comments. Don't be shy. Even if you're watching this on replay, I'm happy to field them later. And and if I can't answer it, I'll defer to Pearl if it's like a complicated financial aid question. We're getting a lot of this time of year. We're getting a lot of sort of I don't know what the right word is. I guess antagonistic type emails forwarded from colleges to our clients to us that are along the lines of, "Hey, we don't have your stuff, file it," or "You made a correction," stuff like that. So Pearl and I were talking this morning. It's not like filing a tax return where you file it and then you're done. You make a payment and then you're done. In many cases, filing the financial aid forms is just the start of it all. And then what that does is it triggers a whole lot of other, okay, we got your form, now send us your dependent verification worksheet, send us your non-tax filer statement, send us your tax returns via iDoc and all this other type of stuff. And a lot of times, Pearl's giving me an example this morning. A lot of times the colleges don't know what the right and the left hand are doing. They're not communicating with each other. So we had a client today who was told, "We need your log into your account and pull up the list of items that we need because we still didn't get boom, 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 boom." And maybe there's 3 things. So Pearl dutifully logged into that account and she saw it listed in the account that every item that the college in the other email said it didn't receive was checked off as having been received, but because it was sent in a couple of weeks ago. But still, these automated emails go out and they cause further confusion. It's kind of irritating, and it's unduly stressful. Okay, so let's talk about the 529 and why they're potentially not all they're cracked up to be. The deal with the 529 is that it's not necessarily how much. It's not whether it counts against you, I should say. It's how much it counts against you. Meaning that if 2 families are applying for college and one has a 529 and one doesn't, the family with the 529 will receive less financial aid from a college, all other things being equal. The 529s were sold for legitimate tax reasons as a good investment because the earnings grow tax-free. You can pull out the money without any penalties if you use it for higher education, that type of thing. However, those assets, let's say you stash $100,000 away in a 529, that can actually penalize you somewhere around $5,000 in a reduced eligibility, meaning you will receive $5,000 less, up to $5,000 less per year at many colleges. So sometimes, and this is, I can't even say that this is the majority of times, infrequently, it makes sense to get rid of a 529 and put it into an asset, a type of savings account that doesn't penalize you at all. And those types of accounts will be discussed in a few minutes. Those are part of the 4.5 loopholes, any one of which can triple your eligibility. I promised that in the beginning. So sometimes the 529 is a bad deal. Now, other times, no matter what a parent does, they're not going to qualify for need-based aid because they make too much money. The financial aid formulas contemplate about 70, 75, 77 factors, including income, which is much more important. And so there isn't a magic number, though, that if you go over it, you're not going to be able to qualify for anything. But that being said, if you make too much money in the financial aid formulas, it doesn't really matter if you have a 529 or not. In fact, it might be a good thing if you're not going to otherwise qualify for need-based aid, because then you have the tax benefits. So the 529 is kind of a mixed bag. It's neither friend nor foe. It's not good or bad. It's one of these things where it really depends. And for some families, it hurts them. For many families, it's great. I can't tell you, whether it's good for you or not. But what I can tell you is what you need to look at is what is your eligibility. Can you calculate the expected family contribution, your expected family contribution, which you can do on the FAFSA website, and then figure out if there's any ways to lower that contribution by sheltering assets. So that's that's the type of thing I talk about in my workshops. I give examples. This presentation tonight is really just kind of almost like a rough draft of that. But if you are interested in learning more about how the formulas work and more specifically what that means for you in terms of qualifying for more money, number one, I've got other workshops coming up. You can go to our main site, lockwoodcollegeprep.com, and I'm also going to, like I said before, if you're just joining us, this is new to you, I'm going to be giving out a copy of my revised book, How to Pay Wholesale for College. So, hello. Okay, good. We got Barbara is here, and okay, Barbara. It's always nice to see our loyal listeners. There's someone else from Maine who also pops up. She was watching from the Portland Diner a couple of days ago. I don't think that's so close to you, Barbara, but I recommend the hash browns. All right, hello to, wow, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce that right. Yasim. Tell me if that is correct. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so that was topic number 1. So we've got a few more here that I promised to go through. Topic number 2, the truth about what it takes to get into a top college. Hint, it's not politically correct. It's not about grades and scores. It's way more than grades and scores. So here's the deal. At most competitive colleges, they care about many other things besides kids who can actually do the work. It's not a pure meritocracy. So this is controversial, and I actually have hate email specifically addressing this topic. What I say is that what colleges reserve spots for are special categories. So if you're not a special category, if you're not if you are a plain old white person, and I say this in jest, although I'm not a racist, I just want you to know that I love white people. I mean, really, I think everybody should have a white friend. That's one of my few financial aid jokes, by the way. So anyway, so if you're not in a special category, an example might be underrepresented minority. There's 5 or 6 others. I'm just kind of breezing through things today. If you're not in one of those categories, and you look at the average GPA and the average SAT or ACT score, there's a continuum. But if you're the white kid or the one who's not a special category, and you're in the middle, that doesn't mean that you have a good shot at getting into that school. What that means is you need to do a little bit more work to get to the upper end, because those special categories, which also include recruited athletes, by the way, they tend to drag down those averages. So to get into a top school, you have to understand that at least 2/3 of the slots are reserved for non-academic reasons, and you also have to know that grades, yes, they're important, grades and academic credentials, but at a competitive college, that is roughly only about 60% of the equation. So that other 40% has to do with your extracurriculars, and which is stuff you can control, and then there's stuff that you can't control, like your race or ethnicity, but that's all part of the, swirling around the calculus that admissions officers look at to figure out whether or not to give you a spot. So just a quick word about extracurricular activities, because again, I'm trying to just zip through this stuff in about a half hour, and then I'm going to pause for questions periodically. So if you are, if you're thinking about, okay, well, how am I going to distinguish myself from these thousands of other kids who look the same on paper, you've got to kind of think about, okay, what are they doing, and what should I do that's different or atypical, not the same old typical stuff. It's great to be in a club. It's great to go on the cancer walk or whatever last weekend, that type of stuff. But it's atypical should be to found a club. It's great to play a sport. It's atypical to be at a very high level and a captain and all that. It's interesting or kind of good to be interested in reading and writing. It's atypical to have published a book. Okay, so those are just, I'm trying to just get your wheels turning. All right, so I see some people tuning in here. And I just want to, okay, good. Harriet, okay, pins and needles. You're waiting for college responses. Oh, Joanne. Hello, Joanne. We're progressing along, Joanne. I saw the questionnaire filled out by Chloe, so that's moving along. Okay, and Yasim says yes. I think that means that I pronounced your name correctly. And Barb is saying Zelda. Either you know Zelda or you know of Zelda, because Pearl and I figured there's like 3 people in Maine, so you probably all know each other. Ro. Yeah, I haven't talked to you in a while. I need some college updates from you, too. Okay, so let's talk about bullet point number 3, how to negotiate a better deal with the college, even if you couldn't get your hands on compromising photos of the dean, or some kind of wiretapping, or perhaps a dossier, you name it. So I'm starting to do a little bit of that. I'm writing a few appeal letters each week now, and it's going to get a lot busier in a couple of weeks. And the reason is that as more offers come in and I start to review them, that's really when things kind of pick up. So let me just give you a timeline. If you are either, well, if you're a senior or you have a kid who's going to be a senior at some point, the housing deposits for college are due in May 1st. Typically, all financial aid offers come in when everything's said and done by the end of March, beginning of April. So that doesn't really leave a lot of time between April, 1st and May 1st. Did I say March? May 1st is housing deposit deadlines. So that doesn't really leave a whole lot of time to figure out, what the numbers look like, how much college is going to cost you, and try to negotiate a deal. But that being said, the colleges are also under pressure. It's not just college students and their parents. They're doing whatever they can possibly do to enroll kids in college. So April's really let's make a deal time. Let's make a deal month. So I've talked to a couple clients in the last few days about their situations, and I just want to kind of zip through some of the commonalities and give you a few tips on negotiating. So first of all, a lot of people don't even understand that you can negotiate an offer. So that's the first thing to get, is that you can actually try to ask for more money. The second thing is you should base your appeal letter on information that they don't have already. So I was talking to one of my clients, and we were kind of brainstorming before the weekend, before Snowmageddon, before the nor'easter. Oh, Barbara, by the way, I forgot to ask you, did you get slammed with snow up there in Maine? We're still getting some, but no wind. Okay, so anyway, so the client told me, well, yeah, we're kind of we're older than most parents. We had our daughter kind of later in life, and my income is kind of modest. I'm getting near retirement age. I'm not really sure how I'm going to pay for college other than tapping into my retirement. So I said, okay, I understand all those things, but they know how old you are because that's on the financial aid form, so that's not really new information. I'll try it. I'll say that. But what I was really looking for is information that has a bearing, either has a bearing on their ability to pay for college, or it's kind of a leverage type of tool to be able to use against them, specifically an offer from another competitor college. So in his case, we have a lot of similar offers that make the cost similar for 3 different colleges, which always happens, by the way. But we also have some information that they don't know about the client's financial situation, which to cut it short is that they have expenses that the school doesn't know about that have to do with caring for an elderly parent and some other stuff. But some other arguments along the lines of here's some new information are such as, okay, so I know that I just filed my financial aid forms to you a couple months ago, but those were based on, or the income information was based on what happened 2 years ago. So for people who filed financial aid forms now, for the kids who are graduating in 2018, the income information is from 2016. So if something happened since then, like someone lost their job, or they got downsized, or they were forced to make less money for some other way, the financial aid office has no idea whether that happened or not. They're totally blind to that. So that is a good bit of information to tell a financial aid office on an appeal, as well as sharing other offers, as well as other things that may have happened, like some unusual expenses that could be related to health insurance not covering certain expenses, or stuff along those lines. So that's sort of what you should keep in mind. And I always reduce everything to writing. I mean, it's a nice sounding letter. It's thank you very much for taking the time to reconsider my award. I want to give you this new information that has a bearing on my ability to pay for college that you didn't know about, that type of stuff. So the tone should be very grateful. Okay, let me take a quick pause just to see who else is here. Okay, Annie, wait for all offers first. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that the more leverage you have, the better. I wouldn't jump the gun because you make, unless you're really sure you're not going to get another offer, you're just waiting for Harvard or something. That I would definitely be more patient. They're not going to run out of money. So, all right, who else we have here? Oh, Mary, hello, and Jeff from Newton North High School. Chris O'Reilly from just kind of at large, lurking around. All right, good. All right, so if you have any questions, pop them in here. Dan, I'm going to get to yours. I'm just trying to go through the rest of what I promised. But if you're just joining us, welcome. This is sort of a makeup impromptu presentation because I was snowed out in Smithtown, or I mutually decided with Will, the program director, even though the library in Smithtown was open, we said, you know what, the forecast is iffy. Let's just reschedule. So we're gonna pick a date for me to come back out there. But I figured in the meantime, since I've got all this free time, I thought I would just try to help anyone who registered for that workshop and still wanted this information, as well as bringing out for everyone in the big wide world, including Chris. All right, so let's talk about bullet point number 4, the screwball reason that an expensive college can actually cost less than an El Cheapo state school. This is actually counterintuitive, but it's an easy explanation. I think you'll agree once I lay it out for you. Here's the deal. State schools don't have money because they traditionally have relied on funding from their own governments, their own respective state governments, but that has been pulled away year after year after year for the last 10 to 15 years as a percentage of their operating budget. So what they've been forced to do is to raise their prices a lot more and seek out-of-state students who pay higher rates than residents of the state or the in-state resident tuition rate. So in contrast, private colleges, they may start with a higher sticker price and they may start up here, and the state school may be here, but the private schools tend to discount a lot because they're more competitive, they have more money, so frequently they discount you down, and that could be either need-based or merit-based. It's usually merit-based, but I've seen both. If they want a kid who is going to benefit them, and when I say benefit them, I'm talking about classing up their rankings in U.S. News and World Report. So that's why they will bribe kids with money, and they will offer fat, juicy scholarships. That's where the big money comes from. I had another question about scholarships this afternoon that I'll share with you. There's 2 types of scholarships. The big money, which is what I focus on, is from the college endowments themselves, merit scholarships. And those are generally based on grades and scores, but it's very difficult for many colleges to figure out what their exact criteria are, mostly because colleges leave those criteria kind of squishy. They don't pigeonhole themselves into saying everyone who has a blah blah a 3.8 GPA and above a 1400 SAT or something is going to get the presidential scholarship. It doesn't work that way. They'll say recipients of the presidential scholarship in past years tended to have been in the top 5% of their class and tended to have GPAs of such and such. That's what I see more often than not. They have the wiggle room there because they, at the end of the day, if they want a kid badly enough, they'll find the money for them. So that's why the private schools can actually cost you less because they just have more money to give. Now, so just to round out that discussion, I'm really talking more about private schools versus out-of-state state schools. Private schools versus in-state state schools, that's usually a pretty wide gap between those two costs. And it's kind of hard to get a private school that starts at like $70,000 down to about $26,000, $28,000 a year. That being said, the other thing to look at is what your total cost is going to be. And the state schools generally have a really bad statistical history of getting kids out in 4 years because, why do you think that is? Whereas I'll give you the answer. I'm just curious. Type in why you think it takes so long to get out of a state school compared to a private school, which generally private schools do a lot better job getting kids out in 4 years. So I'm gonna take a sip of water. Anyone who thinks they know, who's brave enough to answer that question, pop it in comments for the whole world to see. I'm gonna drink this water, and anyone who gets it right, I'm gonna give you a copy of my new book, How to Pay Wholesale for College. And anyone who gets it wrong can also have it. Okay. So why does it take so long? Why does it take longer to get out of a state school than a private school? I see some answers. All right. So, and I see Chris is lurking. Okay. And I see some other questions coming in. Good. All right, so the answers are, these are all good answers. D, you're the one with the right answer. But these all contribute. They want to make their money back, too much partying, coddle more, state gives them more money. No, it's actually the opposite. Poor basic math, these kids. That's kind of funny. Yeah, so the answer is that, and you can talk to any parent of a kid who has a kid in a state school, it's not so easy to get the classes that you need to fulfill your major. So give D a virtual hand clap in the Facebook chat. There's probably some clapping emoji or emoticons or whatever those things are called. But yeah, you got that right. D. Lou. Lack of available classes to fulfill major. Nice. So there's ways to kind of game the system, but that's really the issue. Is that if you're a business major and you need to take accounting 101 or something, you may not get that for a couple of years because you're behind in priority to the upperclassmen who still need to take that. Whereas the private schools tend not to have that problem as much. It's not clear across the board that they don't have that problem. It's not universal, but they tend to not have that problem. Okay, good. All right, I see some more questions coming in. D, you are welcome. Yes. Okay. Joan, I see you. You're asking me if I see your responses. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of, it's hard for me to go back and forth from camera to my sheet, but I am going to be answering questions. Just give me a few minutes to get through the information I promised everyone first. Okay, so that was how an expensive private college can actually cost you less out of pocket than a El Cheapo state school. All right. Next, the biggest mistake families make in the college admissions and financial aid and how to avoid it. Okay, hard one for me to come up with just to identify just one mistake. But if I had to pick one, and I have to because I said I would, then, and I think I speak for Pearl too, who would have been here tonight, but she's out drinking like Prosecco with her friend Christine, and she may be watching for all I know, but or she just may be too inebriated. Hopefully I don't have to pick her up in the snow. But anyway, too much information? It is Facebook. This is the home of too much information. So so what Pearl and I think might be the biggest problem, or the biggest problem that you can avoid easily, easier said than done perhaps, is letting your child drive the bus, drive the train, be in charge of the whole process. So Pearl and I ran on this page yesterday for College Talk Tuesday. We did a whole segment on a case study, which was really an amalgamation of several clients, where the gist of it is, the kid's a senior, he gets into 2 different types of schools, a really super expensive out-of-state state school that's going to be at least $50,000, between $50,000 and $60,000 a year, and he also got into a SUNY school, State University of New York school, for those of you who are not New York residents. And of course, he wants to go to the school that's double because of the college experience. And the dad's like, what are you talking about? It's the same quality education. Why would I pay double for it? And then the response is, well, why'd you let me apply to these schools, Dad? So all sorts of like hurt and emotion and manipulation and stuff like that. So I'm not sure where the mom stands in this case, but generally the mom's on the kid's side. If I had to pick one typical fact pattern. So I think that what we're looking at potentially is the dad making a pretty big mistake, or being swept up in the guilt or the manipulation or whatever you want to call it of his kid and maybe the mom. And frankly, I think that is. I'm not saying that's the wrong choice of school to go to. I mean, in this particular family situation, I totally see the dad's point. But just, not setting your kids' expectations and letting them drive the train, hey, apply anywhere, we'll figure it out, as opposed to what I think he actually said this, I don't know if the kid was listening, but the little speech sometime over the summer in between junior and senior years to be something like, look, you can apply anywhere you want, But the numbers have to work out. We don't know what they're going to be. And I know this is hard for you to understand, son or daughter, but first of all, you've never paid a friggin' bill in your life. So you don't know what it's like to have to come up with a couple extra $1,000, let alone another 50 to 60 grand. Number two, it's odd anyway, even if you've never paid a bill in your life, because think about buying a house or a car or something else that's really expensive. You wouldn't allow yourself to fall in love with it if, all things being equal, if you had no clue what the price was. If you had a decent idea what the price was, or you knew what it was, you could decide whether or not it's something to go after. But with college, you don't really know what the price is going to be until March or April, maybe even later, but usually around March of senior year of high school, which could be it could be 4 months after you've submitted the applications, and you're sitting back and twiddling your thumbs and waiting. So I get the pressure. I understand that, but that could be the biggest mistake if I had to pick one. But let me throw in a few bonus mistakes. Let's go. So another big mistake is not applying at all for financial aid. Something like 53% of eligible families do not apply. Don't even bother applying for financial aid, which is kind of silly. I got that statistic on the internet where I am right now, so I believe it. I've seen it for years. I'm still not really sure where that stat came from. I've seen it in USA Today. I've seen it in a bunch of other places. So whatever the number is, a lot of people leave money on the table because they don't know any better, because they think, why bother? I've heard that such and such. I've heard that Boston College doesn't give any money. Well, in fact, Boston College meets 100% of financial need. So they do give money to some people. They don't necessarily give money to families that make $500,000 a year and think they should get money. But they don't, anyone who says something to you like, well, they don't give money, don't bother, or I went through that. First of all, they're not telling you what their tax returns show. They probably don't know what your tax returns show. They probably don't understand how the financial aid formulas work, because there's something like 77 factors. So there's a lot of, just in general, there's a lot of urban legend and half-truths flying around, and that's probably another big mistake. That's mistake number 3 out of many that I think that parents and families succumb to, is just paying attention to just random unqualified other people, other parents. Sometimes guidance counselors aren't really qualified. They're not trained in the nuances of financial aid. So you have to be very careful about who you listen to. Me too, me included. I mean, just because I have this magnificent set here and this high tech presentation doesn't mean that I know everything. I'm good, but to take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Okay, I see some more stuff coming in. All right, cool. I see some clapping for D. All right, good. So I will be good. I will address these comments and cheering. Great. Okay. All right. Next topic. Your guidance counselor says that can flat out sabotage your chances of admission to your dream school. Okay. So I should have made this topic. Stuff your guidance counselor says or does that can sabotage your chances. I've heard some of the nuttiest stories. I'm not bashing guidance counselors, by the way. There's plenty of good ones, and there's plenty of really bad ones, just the same way there's plenty of bad accountants and lawyers and college guys and whatever. But I had a client a couple years ago who was a really, really accomplished kid. And her biggest issue when we were doing her applications together, when she was a rising senior, is that the activity section on the common application permits only 10 spots. And she had a resume that's 3 pages. So I said, which we helped her put it together. And the reason we put it together was because the resume, in my opinion, is a selling document, not just a dry recitation of first I did this, then I did that. There's different ways to describe things. Some are more powerful and will resonate more and be more impressive sounding than others. Cashiering. You could say something like, I worked at a cashier at the local restaurant. Or you could say, cashiering duties and responsibilities included settling transactions of between $500 to $1,000 a day, responsible for keeping an orderly work area, responsible for handling customer complaints and ensuring customer satisfaction. Those are all important things that show your responsibility, show that you're able to deal with people who are not just your peers, but perhaps older people. That you're showing up for work and you're whatever. So you get the point. Those are two different ways of describing the same thing. And the guidance counselor told this girl, I don't think you should submit a resume because the people reading your application may not have had all that stuff in their background, and this is kind of like showing off. And I said, you're applying to college. Why should you are showing off? I mean, not in a douchey way, but that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're promoting yourself. This is marketing. It's not about your grades and your scores, or it's not only about your grades and your scores. It's about how you answer the question, why should we take you compared to these other, 5,000, 10,000 kids? It is showing off. I'm sorry. That was dumb. What else have I heard? I've heard a client of mine who just reached out to us yesterday from last year. She had her application deleted by her guidance counselor at her private high school where the parents paid tuition for that type of help. After we worked on it for like 2 months, just deleted, never to be found again. We had to redo it. I heard something 2 weeks ago, another one, which was something along the lines of a guidance counselor was talking one of my clients out of applying to some private colleges, and she said something like, why do you want to apply there? You should apply only to state schools. That was good enough for my kids. Why aren't you applying there? And my response is, I have nothing against the state schools, but I do have, I can't believe that a guidance counselor would, I believe it, I'm sorry, but they shouldn't insert their own, their own opinions into that. And I think a big problem, this is going to sound snotty, but I think a big problem with a lot of guidance counselors, at least when it comes to competitive kids, kids who are aspiring to go to Ivy League schools, is I think a lot of guidance counselors just don't relate to those types of kids. And I'm not even going to tread lightly here because it's a snowstorm, so anything goes. But frankly, people become guidance counselors a lot because of because teaching is too hard for them. And say what you will, I love teachers. I think they're great, but they don't have a job like a fireman who works around the clock, or even some like corporate lawyers who are working. I used to practice law for 5 years. I worked 9 to 9, and we did overnights that lasted 3 consecutive nights, about 3-4 times a year. What I'm saying is, investment bankers, those are the types of people who, they push themselves really hard, and they aspire to go to top schools. I know this may not sound great to everyone here. Most guidance counselors were not that type of kid. They didn't necessarily excel academically, and they didn't go to Ivy League or think of themselves as belonging in Ivy League schools. That doesn't mean they're bad guidance counselors. I'm bracing myself for the hate email. I just think they don't necessarily relate to the types of kids who are looking at aspirational type schools. Okay, so what do you guys think about that? I'm nervous about saying that, but anything goes tonight. If I piss off too many people, I'll probably delete this. Nah, I won't. I'll probably advertise it. All right, so I see some more questions coming in. I see a lot of questions. Okay, good. Joy, funny. Teachers definitely work around the clock. Some do, but I'm not faulting their work ethic at all. I just think that the reason you go into teaching is partially, it's not to make a ton of money, of course, which that's a whole other comment, but it's a lot of it has to do with the hours and the summers off for a lot of teachers. That's just factual. All right. Now let's talk about the loopholes. Okay, this is good stuff. 4.5 loopholes, any one of which could triple your eligibility for aid. Loopholes. Okay. So, in the financial aid formulas, some stuff counts against you more than others, and some stuff doesn't count against you at all. Specifically, when I say stuff, I mean savings. So, if you're filling out a FAFSA, it says, tell us your net worth, but don't include the following. Don't include these types of items. And specifically, what you should be thinking about is, number one, if you include stuff that shouldn't be included, you're going to ruin your eligibility because you're going to artificially disclose stuff you shouldn't disclose. And the second thing is that you may have an opportunity. So if you have money saved in the wrong places, like in your kid's name where it counts against you the most, you may want to think about pulling it out and putting it into one of these exempt assets. So on the FAFSA, there's 4 exemptions. And those exemptions are, meaning these do not count as part of your net worth: retirement accounts, primary residence, annuities, and insurance. Retirement accounts, primary residence, annuities, and insurance. Those are the 4 horsemen, the 4 exemptions of financial aid. So retirement accounts means any type of retirement account. Your 401k, your 403b, your 457, and so forth. None of those penalize you. Okay? Next, your primary residence. That is not part of your net worth on the FAFSA. Now, there's another form that a lot of colleges require, about 400 require, called the CSS profile. Different ballgame. So if you're applying to a school that takes the CSS profile, your house does count against you. Another question we get a lot is, what about investment properties or vacation homes and all that? Those count against you everywhere. So just your primary residence is one of the 4 exemptions on the financial aid formulas. Sometimes what people do is they stuff money into their house. They pay off a mortgage or something. I don't think that's the best idea, but I'm not a financial advisor, so I'll let that dangle out there. Then there's annuities and insurance. So annuities, all annuities are totally exempt in the financial aid formulas. So sometimes what people will do is they'll take money that's penalizing them and they'll purchase an annuity, and then therefore that money is now off the financial aid balance sheet. So if you have $100,000 in the wrong place, you're losing up to $5,000 a year for financial aid. If you then take that money and that's hurting you, $5,000 a year, and you put it into an annuity, you've now improved your eligibility by $5,000 a year. Same thing with insurance products. Now, I mentioned before, and I'm like twitching as I say this, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't sell investments or things like that. I know enough about this stuff to make me dangerous, but I'd rather be independent, and I don't want to be like, I don't want to say something at a workshop like, yes, you can improve your eligibility by $10,000 a year just by buying an insurance product. And oh, look, I have an application here in my suit. Here, what a coincidence! What a coinkydink. So I'd rather just kind of refer people. I mean, I have a good friend of mine, Harry, who handles all that stuff for my clients. So anyway, my point is that it may benefit you in a vacuum, but you've got to be very vigilant to run down all of the the pros and the cons about moving money around, including if you're going to buy an annuity, then what are the fees involved? How can you get your money out? Is there a lockup period? Same thing with insurance products. Same thing but on the flip side, if you're going to sell a 529 or another investment, what are the tax consequences or penalties, if there are any, for doing that? How does that stack up against the possible benefit for improving your eligibility? So there's all these types of things that you have to consider. That is exactly the type of thing that I work through with our clients. But you need to, if you're going to do this on your own, you need to figure that stuff out before you make any rash decisions. Because look, it may make sense in a vacuum to do this, but if your income is too high to begin with, and like I said before, there's no magic ceiling, there's no magic line that once you cross it, you're not going to qualify for anything just because that's only one of 77 factors. But if you're not going to qualify, then it doesn't matter where you have your money. Or if you're only looking at like state schools that are very unlikely to fund you, it's because they don't have any of their own money, then who cares how much you can qualify for if they're not going to give it to you anyway. So those are just some of the not so random thoughts that you need to be aware of, if you're going to try to improve your eligibility. Now, I did say there's 4.5 loopholes, and that dovetails into the special advice and strategies for business owners, which was the last topic I was going to talk about before I went to the questiones. And the point 5 is really a business loophole. So if anyone is self-employed on this broadcast, pay very close attention to the FAFSA. If you're filling it out yourself, it asks, what's the value of your business? And the answer for most people no matter what it really may be, is zero. And the reason I can say that is because it says very clearly in the directions, if you employ 100 or I guess less than 100 people in your business that you own, then you can skip the question. The value of your business is zero. A lot of people don't know that. Even accountants don't know that. So they put down something like, I don't know, 50 grand, 200 grand, or $1 million, something like that. So what happens is, same thing as if you make a mistake by over-disclosing a retirement account that shouldn't be disclosed, or sharing too much of other information that shouldn't be shared, even on Facebook. Then you will shoot yourself in the foot. You'll rob yourself of money you otherwise would have been eligible for if you overinflate by accident the value of your business. So most businesses are worth zero for financial aid purposes on paper. I'm sure your business is, if you're self-employed, you have a thriving business, and the future's bright, I'm sure. But in financial aid, think bleak. Think the world is going to end. Okay, so that was about all I wanted to get through. I'm going to post a couple of links right here, and then I'm going to get to the questions. So I promised everyone a copy of my book, and that link to download it is financialaidbook.org. I think. Let me just double check that. Yes, so you can just, if you, I just popped that up there. If you, I'll email it to you, just giving your email address, and you'll get it. And if you prefer the hard copy instead of the downloadable version, then there's a link to buy that on Amazon. Also, it's kind of in pre-release format, so I haven't had it checked for grammar and spelling and stuff that thoroughly, so if you spot anything, please let me know. Okay, let's go through some of these questions and funny comments. All right, so Dan Maloney, first question. You mentioned earlier about looking for colleges with good career services. How do you find those? There's no database, but you need to do your due diligence and visit career centers at each college on your list. And, some schools are known for their career centers list. I think maybe Forbes or who is it? I think Forbes might publish a list of schools with the best career services. Princeton Review, I think, might also. I usually see colleges like Bentley in Boston, which have great internships, and Penn State always seems to have great career services, top 5. So I just know that from experience, but yeah, I would check out Forbes or just kind of search that, I guess. All right, so Annie, Jeff, Mary, Chris, Joanne. What about deadlines? Do this before May 1st. The negotiating, yeah, you need to do it. April's a very busy month. It's a very ugly, busy month. So yes, absolutely. Chris Lurking. Monica Schlesinger, is merit aid negotiable? 100%, totally negotiable. Probably a little bit easier to negotiate merit money than need-based money. So yes. Great question. Thank you. I'm going to like that question. And I guess I'll like Chris just for lurking. Joanne, does the parent versus quiet child do the negotiating? I think you should do it on paper, writing. So even if you're writing a letter as your kid, I think most financial aid officers, most admissions people understand that kids really aren't equipped to negotiate. So I don't ever use that fiction personally. However, if you talk, and I go to all these conferences, and you may have heard stuff on college tours about financial aid officers or admissions people saying, we always want to hear from the kid. We're very impressed when we hear from the kid. Okay, I'm sure, but what percentage of kids who are negotiating are really parents just kind of ghostwriting for the kids? So I wouldn't do it over the phone. So you can be quiet child if you're a decent writer. All right, Anne Marie Cross. If you go to a community college for a semester or a year, you start the whole application process over again if you want to transfer to a non-community college. Yeah, you do, unless you got in and deferred. But applying to college from community college is really, in terms of the application process, is really the same as applying from high school. So thank you for that question. All right, then I saw some answers that D got correct, but I still see Yeah, I see some other good answers there. When I did the little challenge there, too much partying, that's funny. Joan is a friend of Lynn. Deborah, go D. Chris telling me to multitask. Thank you so much. Thanks for your support. Deborah Peretz, I think you're the person who my friend Halit works with. Our good friends. I am that person. Yeah, definitely Daniel. Ryan, to be determined, although he's taking ACT classes with us. He's a great kid. What's more important, grades or ACT? Okay, that's a good question, Deborah. What's more important, grades or SAT or ACT scores? Grades, scores, and rigor. Those are the big three. Your GPA, your ACT or SAT scores, and how many APs you've taken. Those are the most important components of on the academic side, and those together roughly comprise roughly 60% of the admissions officer's decision whether to admit you or not. So it's not that grades are more important than scores, or scores are less important. I think if I had to give a nod to one, grades are more important, but grades in hard classes like AP or IB classes, more so than honors, more so than regular curriculum classes. And on that note, I don't think the ACT or the SAT is going away anytime in the near future, if at all. And the reason for that is because the most commonly given grade in high school is an A. There's so much grade inflation that's very hard for admissions officers to be able to figure out whether a kid can actually do the work in college. And sometimes, a lot of times, parents are baffled when kids have high GPAs but their ACT or SATs are very low. The answer frequently is because of that grade inflation, is that they're getting A's, but it's the most commonly given grade, and when they're giving a standardized test, which is there's no purely objective way to figure out, to predict how well a kid's going to do in college. There's no perfect way to do that. Standardized testing is one of those ways, which it's not as accurate, by the way, as how affluent parents are, or whether they went to college. Those are actually better predictors of how well a kid's going to do in college, but they're still accurate. There's still some value in them, and that's why they're not going away at any time soon. So you need to do really well on them if you aspire to go to schools that have traditionally have had kids with high scores. Okay. Teresa Souther, juniors making a list of schools. How to find the ones most likely to offer merit aid. Good question. Here's my shorthand. So state schools, unlikely but possible. Private schools, better bet. If you look at everyone that the college admitted the previous year, the raw number, and you look at the median SAT and ACT score, and you can kind of see based on that where you fall in. If you're in the top 25% of that continuum, then you have a much better shot at getting in and getting money. So if you're in the top 25% in terms of grades and scores, I like your chances of getting merit. Okay. Joy, funny. Annie, teachers definitely work around the clock. And yeah, I mean, I don't mean that. I hope everyone took this. I know I'm going to offend somebody, but I'm just saying what I have perceived. We have our kids have great teachers. But I'm not saying they're great because of their work hours. I'm just saying that they happen to be great more because of their personalities, I think. Cynthia, there should be a way to measure a guidance counselor and their success, maybe a rating system by the kids they work with. The only thing that troubles me about rating systems in general, not just like what you're talking about, but those ratemyprofessor.com ratings or whatever, is you got to take everything with a grain of salt. The professors that get the highest ratings, I think, on Rate My Professors are the ones that give the highest grades. So, the ones that are the hardest or the most difficult, those are probably better professors. If I had to pick one, if you're trying to, challenge a kid and get them to use their brains more. So, guidance counselors. I think the problem with rating teachers or guidance counselors is there's only so much that they can control, and the problem inherently is that the kid's effort can't be rated. So I don't really know. I'm not. Maybe I shouldn't even brought it up at all because I don't have a solution to it. I don't know if it's really a problem. By the way, I just think I actually think want to get a little esoteric here? I think the education system works perfectly. And I know very few people who agree with me. But here's why I think that. Think about why the educational system, secondary education, was created. It was created back when we were an agrarian society, and as the Industrial Revolution was starting to gear up and hum along, we meaning as a country, but the industrialists needed to get families off the farm, kids off the farm, and train them to work in factories. So they were actually the ones behind creating, in Massachusetts and other early places, the first secondary schools. And so what they have are, so here's what happens in these factories. You have, here's what happens in school as created by the industrialists. You have a boss at the head of the class who just, tells kids what to do, who sit there, and they take notes. They sit there for long periods of time, or maybe 45, 50 minutes. They don't really learn anything. A little bell rings, then they shuffle off to the next class, and the same thing happens again. They're not really rewarded for questioning the authority or challenging or anything like that. That's that was how we were trained to get off the farm and into the factories. By the way, I remember reading how before the first educationals, I don't know if it was Horace Mann or someone, but before the first school was started in Massachusetts, literacy rates were like 98%, and then once they established schools, it was like 50%, or something ridiculous and counterintuitive like that. So that's why I think the educational system works, because it does what it's supposed to do, which is kind of train kids to just follow orders and shuffle around and not really question authority and all that. Unfortunately, I don't know if that really, I don't think that bodes well for life after school, but I don't think it's broken. So that is my esoteric moment for you guys. All right, what else? Chris, some wisecrack, as usual. Annie, when writing an appeal, can you tell them too much that work against you? For example, debt history, bills in arrears, etc. It's not going to hurt you in terms of, I think you might be asking whether it's going to show like weakness that you can't afford to send your kid to school there at all. I think that, there's probably a line that you don't want to cross. But if you've had genuine hardship because, because of a divorce or medical issues or something like that, that's appropriate to be able to mount as an argument. But you don't want to make it seem like you're just going to create more of a problem for them, like you're going to enroll your kid and then you'll never be able to pay. So you got to kind of use your own judgment that way. That's an interesting question. Yasim, how do you negotiate better merit scholarships? Okay, two things. One, I'm going to give you a shameless plug for my course on that, appealsclass.com. I'm putting that in here. The gist of it is, if you have other offers from other colleges, that is going to be very helpful. If you are being, if you are trying to get more money from a school, it's going to cost you more than the other colleges that particular school that you want to go to competes with. That's the best case scenario. So when I have sophomores and juniors who are, I'm helping construct a college list, always I suggest competitor colleges for them to possibly use as like a straw man to get in and get a better offer from, just to use against the A-list college. So if you're thinking about this ahead of time, that's something to keep in the back of your mind. If you have a list of 12 schools, 10 or 12 schools, I think it makes sense to have one or two chosen just for negotiating purposes. So that's the best way to do it. The rest of the story is, you want to be very courteous and ask them to reevaluate your award. You bring up any new bits of information that they don't have before, which in this case would be other offers. It really depends on the situation, though, and you're welcome. I think we're charging still only $97 for appealsclass.com training. It's got all sorts of sample letters, and I'll even help you write your letter. I'll look over your draft and give you some advice on it. So that is my shameless plug of the evening. So I'm giving away a free book, but I'm plugging the appeals class. All right. In Cross, what percentage did you say that grade scores and rigor comprise? 60%. What's the rest of the percentage? 40. It's everything else. It's I don't think you're asking me to do the arithmetic. It's it's your stuff you cannot control, like your ethnicity and what state you live in. Well, I guess you can control that a little bit. But it's also your extracurriculars, it's your leadership, it's your character, it's your interviews, it's your essays. It's a whole bunch of other stuff that has nothing to do with grades and scores. But loosely, it's your character. Okay. Moving along. Joanne, if you're divorced, do they need to know that person's income or that the parent won't contribute? Yes. The answer is that most schools don't find out about the ex-spouse because only one spouse will disclose information. That being said, some of those I mentioned before, there's two main financial aid forms, the FAFSA and the CSS profile. 400 colleges take the CSS profile. I'd say, if I had to guess, 25 to 30% of those schools, so maybe 100 to 100 and something, 125, 150 of those schools also require a non-custodial parent filing. They have to do their own profile too. So if you're asking me, do they need to know that person's income or if that person won't contribute, they may or they may not. You need to tell them. If they're not going to contribute, if they're the deadbeat dad, by the way, never a deadbeat mom, if they're deadbeat dad, you should absolutely tell them that that's the case. Tug on their heartstrings. Most financial aid and admissions officers are human beings, and they have feelings, just like we do. And that can only help your argument, but it definitely helps explain why you don't have money saved for college and that type of thing. So in my experience, divorced single moms tend to be looked upon very favorably, and they tend to do very well in this process. Okay, good question. Barb, can you mail my book to me? It's an electronic copy, or you can buy it on Amazon, Barb. Let's not get crazy. Okay, I thought you read it. I thought you said you had it. But if you bring Faith down for a boot camp, I'll have some extras lying around. How's that? I can promise you that. Okay, I think we are still have 30-something people on, but I am out of everything I wanted to cover. Oh no, I want to say one more thing about scholarships. So here's the deal with scholarships. The big money I mentioned before comes from the college endowments themselves. Now, there are little scholarships. There are outside scholarships that come from, mostly, I think the best bets are like high school lists, Rotary, Chamber of Commerce. I'm part of the Rotary here in Glenhead. I'm a Rotarian, and they give scholarships. So the thing about that is, and I was discussing this with a client of mine yesterday, he received, his daughter's a senior, she received a lot of nice, healthy financial aid awards, need-based financial aid awards. And he said, what about Isabel applying for some scholarships? And I said, look, I made a couple comments. The first is that many parents, it's never the kids, but hardly ever the kids, will spend hours that turn to days and weeks and months going down the scholarship rabbit hole on websites, entering fake contests, getting all kinds of spam and solicitations that they unknowingly signed up for. I don't really know people. I've heard of them, I've read about it on websites, but I don't really know anyone who got a ton of money or anything significant from scholarship searches online. I do know someone who specializes in that. If you're interested, I can just private message me. I'll give you her information. But I don't really know, anyone from the general public who has that type of expertise that paid off. That being said, let's say that you were somehow able to cobble together $5,000 from 7 or 8 different scholarships. In my client's case, when we were talking about his daughter Isabel, I said, look, you've received a nice need-based financial aid award that's based on your resources that you have to be able to use to pay for college. But now what you're talking about is trying to come up with more resources that were not disclosed on your financial aid forms, but you're obligated to to update the school if you get some more money, because that's part of what you're signing off with when you signing off on when you do the financial aid forms. So if you're able to come up with another, whatever I said, $10,000, $6,000. What that represents is more resources that will take away from the previously issued award from the college. That's the problem. You can spend all of these, days, hours, weeks, and months cobbling together these scholarships, only to find that they take away from what you would have gotten from the school had you had the resources that you had before you were awarded these 7 scholarships. So I'm very iffy and wishy-washy, to say the least, on the whole scholarship thing. Now, that being said, if you know you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, then have at it. Go for those scholarships. And I still think the best bet is the local stuff that may not be online. And if you have someone like that, just private message me here. If you're not going to qualify for need-based aid and your kid feels like filling out some more applications and stuff, I'll refer you to my friend Ashley, who is very good at coaching kids through that process and helping them qualify for scholarships. Okay, so that was really my true final comment. And Barb has incomparable student. Yes, Faith is special, but you probably have the incomparable applicant. The IA, as we call it in the biz. Annie, in the appeal letter with the job loss or change, do you mention figures, how much it decreased? Will they ask for current docs? I'd be as specific as possible, and anything that you claim, be prepared to back it up, for sure. So, great question. That is important. Joan says, Lynn was right. You are wonderful. I wish I knew who Lynn was, but I agree with her. I don't know. I'm not sure which Lynn you're talking about. But thanks. I have my moments. Not everyone agrees with me, especially Chris. I don't think I see any other questions. So, my final offer to you guys is, and this is just to reward you for sticking around. If you want to set up a quick, meaning 20-minute conversation about your personal financial plan, meaning if you are interested, you're genuinely interested in exploring working together. It's no obligation to work with us. I may not even think that you're a good fit for us. That happens a lot. 1 out of 3 times, sometimes. Then you are more than welcome to book a free college strategy session. I just put the link up here, which I'm going to take down tomorrow. Mostly because I'm totally out of the free advice business. Or almost out of the free advice business. I could do that all day long if I wanted to, but I want to thank you for joining me tonight. Like I said, this is an impromptu thing. You could have been doing a whole lot of other stuff. So I appreciate the absolutely. I appreciate the interest. I think it's important stuff, but you could, like I said, you have other things to do. So there's no place I'd rather be. So I think it's important, and you're more than welcome to. I see a lot of likes and stuff. Cool. Thank you for the likes. Please share this information. I think that'd be really cool if you could share this with any of your friends who are stressed out about this, who are not getting the right answers from guidance counselors, who aren't overly sensitive and they don't mind the non-politically correct crap that comes out of my mouth. That would be great. So thanks a lot again, and I will, we'll be back on the air every Friday. We do a free hour of coaching. I just take any questions that come in. That's at 9 o'clock. Same thing right here. And every Tuesday, Pearl and I do a college Talk Tuesday show, which is kind of a here's what you need to be doing now type of format. So that's it. And then we do all these webinars and workshops and stuff like that. Whatever, I just want to make sure you get the information. Okay, so I am now officially going to sign off. Thank you guys, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.